It's the Redbird Reboot podcast. Are you ready to get rebooted, Cardinals fans? He settles down, at least in the zone, and does not stop running.
Blake Murphy.
This is the identity for the Arizona Cardinals.
The run defense is just horrendous, and it's been horrendous for the Cardinals for a long time.
And Marcos Labrada.
He's going to bring over his philosophy. It should make it better.
Present the hottest NFL podcast from the country's hottest state.
He should be turning around the logo.
Actually, some breaking news we can cover here. This popped up just about, 6 minutes ago.
It's Redbird Reboot.
Hello, Arizona Cardinals fans. Welcome into the Redbird Reboot podcast. We've got your two hosts here, Blake Murphy at Twitter, Blake Murphy7, and of course, Marcos Labrada at PancakeSoul. Guys, we have actual Cardinals football to talk about, and I'm excited as we dive into this because unlike last year, Marcos, we had an entertaining first game. Not the way that I think a lot of Cardinals fans would have wanted it to go, but at the end of the day, they had the ball. They got enough stops, they got enough plays with a chance to win the game. You have a couple of drops, questions about a missed throw, something that we'll be able to dig into. And the Cardinals are 0-1 to start the season. Marcos, I think for a lot of Cardinals fans, this was a disappointing loss in more ways than one. And I'm not just talking about the Marvin Harrison Jr. targets, but in a lot of ways, Cardinals fans, I think, were hoping that you could knock off a team like the Bills to show that this team has arrived. Wasn't the case. How are you feeling about the week one game?
Well, it's finally we got football. We got something to actually talk about, just like you mentioned. And the way I feel about it is there's a blame to be, thrown all around, but it is what it is when it comes to like the ups and downs of the season. Obviously, when we lose, we think that the world is falling down. And when we win, we think we're going to the Super Bowl. It's been like that for like years now. And one of the biggest questions was, why didn't we play our starters during preseason? And if you take a loss, and obviously that's what happened, and if you're in a situation where like your number 4 overall pick has 1 catch for 4 yards and 3 targets, you start talking about like, was it a good idea to keep Kyler and Marvin Harrison out of the preseason so they can gel together in real time game reps and not like practice like, hey, he's dominating during practice and whatnot. And look at this throw by Kyler Murray to Marvin Harrison Jr. in practice. And we know them in practice, there's pride that could be in the line, but it's also a situation where coaches are not pushing for you to get injured. They're thinking to themselves, look, man, if you're in a position where you can break up the ball, go ahead and do so. But we're not trying to injure anybody. We're not trying to get you injured. We're not trying to have the opposing team's players get injured. We're over here just trying to practice, and we're just going to go at whatever speed we go to. In a real game, when it matters, then it's like, that same ball that wasn't going to be broken up on that tight window, suddenly that becomes a situation where, oh, crap, he's going to come at me full speed. And if I get injured, you get injured, it's whatever. But that's the difference between game situations and practice.
No, I agree. And that's something I think that a lot of Cardinals fans have expected. And that's where we come in with expectations. Now, Marcos, last year, the Cardinals had bottom of the barrel expectations. They were expected by many to be perhaps a winless team, one of the worst teams in the National Football League without Kyler Murray. People were questioning if Kyler Murray was going to even be brought back by this Arizona Cardinals team. And what I think we saw on Sunday, at least, Marcos, is that the Cardinals are at least a step up from where they were. Now, the question, of course, is how much of a step up from where they were with Kyler and with this team at the end of last year. I think what we've seen for the most part, at least through one game, is that they've gotten a bit better on the defensive side. They have a bit more consistency on the offensive side. And at the same time, it feels like that some of the team's largest improvements that we've been expecting were not out there on the field. And I think that's really what led to a lot of the great start for this Cardinals team, Marcos. Now, if you want to look at least at going over the box score before we start to dig into the film, Cardinals lose 28-34 with the Buffalo Bills. You have about a little over 200 or so total yards for Kyler Murray, some 50 rushing yards, including one very nice juke. You have James Cook with 71 yards. Keon Coleman led the Bills with 51 yards. And the Cardinals had a very unique box score when it came to their receivers. So if I told you, Marcos, that we had 6 receptions for 47 yards, 3 catches, 33 yards, 5 catches for 30 yards, and 2 catches for 26 yards. You would have guessed that probably would have been Marvin Harrison Jr., followed by Trey McBride. Maybe you get James Conner in there for the receiving game. And at some point, you're going to have Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson get in there. No, 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 my friends. Marvin Harrison Jr. ended up with 1 drop on the day, which is actually the first target he got. He had a catch right afterwards for about 4 yards. He had another target on the day, but that was ultimately it. Marcos, this Cardinals offense, we'll talk more about Marv in particular, but it looked a lot like what we saw last year in terms of being able to see Kyler Murray making some plays with his legs, being able to see him in command of the offense, as it were. And we saw the Cardinals be able to march right down the field, which I think was something that was quite impressive overall. Let's talk a little bit about that first half of the Cardinals game, because as the first impressions go, that Cardinals team had a very nice first drive.
It did, and a big part of that was because of James Conner, the guy that we see right now, as the number 6. Okay, so there was a couple of so let me preface this first on the first drive, because a lot of what we see on the first drives is scripted. So I went ahead and counted 10 times under center for our Cardinals offense last game. I also counted about 15 times motion. Most of the time, most of those motion and under center calls were during the scripted series, which is usually the first or second quarter and stuff. So you'll see a bunch of this creativity, as you can see right now on this, under center, fake the handoff, dump it down to James Conner. That ball's going to James Conner. It's not going anywhere else. There's no other reads. You're going to fake the handoff. Obviously, once you turn around and you see the offensive lineman disengage, and now they're open field trying to pick off targets. You got a big gain from this. So a lot of these plays later on in the game, they don't get used up again. We know, obviously, from the looks or from the play design, that a lot of times offensive coordinators do not like calling the same thing 2 times. Why? Because the defense might have a jump on it. Because at that point, maybe they got the cue of what it is. If you're a really bad defense, they're going to run the same play on you multiple times a game. But it's kind of like a cardinal sin. No pun intended, to use the same play over and over and over again. You won't see a play like that later on in the game. It got a bunch of yards, but you won't see that get called again. Now you're seeing them right there in the pistol, about to hand the ball off or fake the handoff. It's going to take his quick steps, and then he's going to dump it down to James Conner. James Conner knows, run up the middle, wait for the ball that's coming to him, and he does the same thing. So he was a lot of the offense, and Kyler Murray on this part is, facilitating the offense, quarterbacking the offense, making sure he delivers the ball where he needs to go, doing what he needs to do as far as selling the fake, turning around, and making sure he delivers the ball. So that's why you see so much success in the first couple of quarters. And then in the second and the third and fourth quarter, you're starting to dig down your playbook. And depending on game situation, you're either going to have your run game there or you're not. And, the Cardinals were down. So obviously run plays are going to be at a conservative call, and you're going to do a lot more pass plays because you need to start getting that chunk yardage and catch up.
Yep, no, I agree. And I think, like you're pointing out, this is the scripted drives. What we've been able to see with the game plan that's been put together is that Drew Petzing can do a good job of being able to attack tendencies, of being able to at least adjust to different areas. One of the biggest things that I think that we saw early on that we'll talk about here, Marcos, is you take a look right up the middle. You've got 4 down line with a 5th over to the side. Part of that's with playing those 2 tight ends and the 12 personnel. So they make sure that they pull safety down. I believe that's Taron Johnson, who got hurt in the game. And you can see that they've got their 2 linebackers at least lined up for the most part. And then they play a lot of what Jonathan Gannon called cloud defense, which the best way to kind of describe it is, imagine that you're playing a cover 3, which is going to be, you've got your one side of the field is going to corner, you've got kind of the middle of the field is going to have a safety, and the other side of the field is going to kind of have a safety that's covering. So it's kind of, you put the field into kind of some of those different areas there. What with cloud coverage in particular, it's a form of cover 2 that looks a little bit like what cover 3 would be. So normally, instead of just mixing up and beating that zone coverage, you're playing cover 2. That allows you to be able to play a bit more of the run defense, and you can be able to see, at least as far as for how some of that works here, They hand the ball off for the most part. The safety, at least for each of those areas, are set. And then they've got two other guys on either other side of the field, likely playing some form of zone coverage. If you bootleg, run everything out to the right on a scramble, the corner who's on that side, he's going to be able to make a play in the run game, run down toward the running back to be able to make the tackle. That's one of those things, at least, that you'll be able to at least see. And you can even kind of see where the field right now is kind of broken up into side number 1, you got side number 2, and side number 3. Now, what you got also on side number 1 is you've got your one wide receiver who's out there, Marvin Harrison Jr. He's got a corner over the top, and there's that safety who's there over the top. So if you end up with a play action fake, and Marvin's the one who goes deep, you split out another tight end, the safety is going to come over and be able to grab the one tight end, and then you're going to be able to look at the other side of these two guys are covering, at least as far as. So it's just the way to look at as far as for how they're going to fit these pass concepts and also how they're going to fit the run. What the biggest thing that I think you'll notice here in the first half that I watched from the film is see those two linebackers in the middle. They are recognizing that Arizona is essentially going to try to run the ball up their throats. And you can see here they've done a decent job of getting some fits. The offensive line, of course, is still getting that push. So here you can see, if you look at one of the cool pets and concepts, their bread and butter is usually going to be some form, at least, either of counter or being able to run some of the outside zone with a pulling guard. So here you can see everyone's lined up normal. It's going to be not just one, but you're going to see two guys pull from the left-hand side. There's Trey McBride and Will Hernandez. Hernandez is the lead blocker. And then you can see at least that Trey McBride, he runs not just to get the outside guy, but let's say that Kyler Murray is faking at least that handoff for the most part. He could just simply pop pass it there, essentially, on maybe not quite a jet sweep. Defenses are having to read all three guys because they're all running into the same place at the same time. If you see Kyler Murray here and it looks like, okay, it could be a little quick thing to McBride, it could be hitter James Conner, he could pull the ball down. Buffalo's edges did a nice job of being able to kind of keep some of that Kyler run game in check. And what we did see was they at least got enough push in the first half that they were able to drive down the field and be able to get a pretty decent, I will say, opening score for the game. Now, this is one of those types of plays, when I call it like their bread and butter plays of that outside zone, something we didn't see with Cliff Kingsbury's offense. We can see here that they're able to have some of their guys be able to get downfield. You're able to see James Conner, essentially. There's so much space that you have here. You've got your guys getting off of blocks, getting to the second level. He's got plenty of space to be able to run in, and you see here he gets tackled on the play too short. But there's at least enough space that he's able to run in between guys. That then sets up some of these third and long plays that you'll see here with 3rd and 6. I believe this is a quick slant to Greg Dortch, Marcos.
Yeah, I think this is the play where he executed on a 3rd and just right, boom.
Yep,
there you go.
6.
And for people that are wondering why, like, you have more targets thrown to Greg Dortch or more targets thrown to Trey McBride, they're basically the possession guys. Like Greg Dortch being the slot receiver, he's going to get more throws thrown his way, more targets, because of the fact that the slot receivers are usually, hey, 5-yard, hitch routes, 5-yard slants, over the ball routes where they're essentially just running like 5 to 6 to 7 yards up the field and turning it around, because they're going to be that option that Kyler Murray is going to have to need in case he either doesn't see anything on the outside and needs to move the chains. He's going to throw the targets over to Trey McBride and to Greg Dortch, because they're going to be the possession guys. Move the chain, people.
Yep, and you can also even see with this coverage that the Bills have, this is there's another safety that's shaded over on top of Marv. You could potentially look at this as a form of one-on-one coverage, but look what happens once the pattern actually releases. Like, he's watching Marv, and then he's also watching to make sure, as far as for they've got two guys on him, because look at the other safety. He sees the other two guys in coverage. He immediately knows where the slant route is going to be, because usually when you bring at least some pressure, for the most part, even we got to see more blitzes in the second half, which we'll go over, but this is one of those cases where he beats the man off the line. The slot's always going to have a little bit more room. He's able to boom quick get the quick slant. And if he hits this guy and that safety is not there, let's say he goes down with the tight end, suddenly Dortch catches that, breaks one tackle, and he could be gone. So this is one of those places of where, when you look at the Bills, is to say, hey, Cardinals have been a good offense from what we've seen so far, especially with the first half offense, but the Bills, they're not slouches. We talked about their linebackers and some of their defensive backs. What we were able to see in this first quarter is that the Cardinals were able to get the edge over Buffalo with those running backs and with these little pass patterns, because the Bills weren't as good at safety or at their linebacker spot. It's a quick hit. You don't give the defense time to be able to get to Kyler Murray. It's a very good, honest play call that you can see from Drew Petzing.
Yeah, and we have these. That's another thing that people were talking that I wanted to really assert, especially on Twitter. With these concepts, you have your number one that you look at, you have your number two, number three, number four, and the progression. Of course, pre-snap, and we've talked about this with Kyler Murray when it comes to a static picture. Pre-snap, he wants to look over to see what matchups he has, and then he's going to try to make his decision. Obviously, afterwards, this is the miss to Marvin Harrison. Well, he made that decision pre-snap that he was going to go to him because he saw him one-on-one to the outside. So he thought to himself, back shoulder fade, just like DeAndre Hopkins. We saw that a billion times with DeAndre Hopkins. They move the chains better than anybody in the league. So this is something that he was just looking over. He looks over, obviously shades, motions the running back, and then he knows he's going to go back shoulder to Marvin Harrison. Unfortunately, they were not on the same page, but that's why you have your progressions. That's why in every offensive installment, you have more than just one option. It's not just blue 22 Marvin Harrison and that's him, or like a Hitch or Haas Y, Greg Dortch. No, they don't say that. They say Haas wide. This is your first guy. This is your second, your third, and your fourth. You move off, or you make the decision pre-snap just based on the picture that you get.
Yeah, and that was one of those plays where when you're talking about, there's the idea of, hey, we need to target Marvin, need to do areas of focus where you draw him in. They kind of just put him on the right-hand side. Mostly he just lined up as the X receiver from what we saw. So
Correct.
What I think is interesting about that throw is, like you said, Marv, from what it looks like, Kyler expected the comeback, whether it was the audible or something. Marvin didn't come back to the ball. Whatever the miscommunication was, to me, I think that part of it comes down to that coverage that they were playing. To me, Kyler was like, I'm not going to throw it over the middle or toward that area because I've got a safety who's lurking there. I think Marv may have been looking, at least you can see where I think he got around just a little bit late as far as for with his head. I think he was probably reading this as looking at more of like a go route. Now, he sees the safeties right there. He's trying to beat the man, get to the outside corner, maybe make up and make a jump for the play. Kyler's looking at that and saying, hey, buddy, this is the NFL. If you're going to be going back for something like that on like a comeback or the ball's out now, whatever you want to talk about with the route being at the wrong depth or the wrong area, part of it too might have honestly been Marv is looking at the sticks. He runs up to the sticks. Kyler is like, I don't feel that comfortable with that safety over the top for the most part, so I'm going to go and throw that back a little bit closer. Whatever the case was, there was a miscommunication, something that I think will end up playing out later as we watch with this team. But that's, I think, some of what you saw at that first half for the Cardinals team, and we'll wrap it up here, I think, with being able to show a little bit. This is where I think in this spot, the Cardinals got a little bit bailed out as we skip ahead with Kyler Murray on this play. You can see where he kind of slides down, gets hit, and he actually kind of hits his own head into the ground, like the guy's able to slide over him. Bills fans are upset about this call. This is one of the places where I think you can see what I'll call first half offensive line, and then we'll take a look at second half offensive line. So you got 6 guys in the box, 5 linebackers. You got 1 bail, so basically you're being able to play. It looks like maybe not quite a quarters coverage, but you're in a pass set where you're essentially keeping everything in front of you. You're wanting to make sure that guys are not going to be getting over the middle of the field for those slants. It's an obvious passing situation. And you can see right here, Paris Johnson's working off of, I believe that's Gregory Rousseau. You got Von Miller with a spin move. So this is one of those places where you look at how they kind of chip a little bit. Miller goes after Jonah Williams. He spins. Williams doesn't bite onto the spin move. He just kind of lets him spin into him and then gets a hand on him. And that allows Kyler to be able to escape around the back door. Now, in this spot, you can say, hey, there's not as much of a pocket that's here. You got to remember, with someone like Greg Rousseau, he did have 3 sacks in this game. Also, you can take a look at the way that things have lined up. It's very interesting. Because you'd think, well, couldn't Kyler, be able to get through the back door here? Well, the answer is no, because Von Miller is spinning into that direction. The linebacker who's in this spot, he's in charge of having to follow Kyler. He gets off to a little bit of a late start. Part of it is just because of a heck of a block finish there for the most part onto Ed Oliver by that should be, I think, 72 Froholt. So good job, Pat Froholt. That's one of those areas where I'm the offensive coordinator, I'm the quarterback's coach. Yeah, if he's going to be spin moving and get sucked into the inside, you've got another player that's there. You absolutely can bail the pocket like how he did. Now, George gets caught up a little bit. Kyler's looking at, hey, maybe I can run for the first down, doesn't get there. And the Cardinals end up taking over with a shot at least to go and score a touchdown. I think they have to get it in, honestly, on the third time. But
That was the third.
let me go real quick over. This is the outside zone play that we're going to get to see. And they were able to run this quite a bit to the left-hand side. So you can see essentially lines up like they're going to go. You got two guys that are there pulling. One gets down to the back end, the two pull around. You can see now you've got three guys who are there. So they did have, at least in this in this setup here, they got six guys down there in the box, two linebackers. You're going to see that change in the second half, which is going to be interesting. So here you can see you got James Conner. He runs around the outside for the most part. The linebacker fills in nice, picks up a couple of options there. Then you get to probably what would be maybe my favorite play of the first half for the Cardinals. This is going to be something that's going to be a high-level type of quarterbacking in the red zone. You're going to see that the Bills bring 4, drop 7. You can see, at least with how it's set up, Marvin Harrison Jr. is kind of running inside to the out. You can see Trey McBride, at least, is kind of running. There's 2 slant routes over. So we got kind of 2 small over routes. The play is pretty clearly designed to be, look for me, going to both Trey McBride or to the outside shoulder, looking at James Conner lined up on the outside. There you're hoping for a mismatch Trey McBride right over there in the center. Kyler sees him, and then he looks like he gets ready, but he ends up running around to the side. That's one of those areas, at least, where I could say that, yeah, it's one of those areas where he probably needs to, at least in that spot, trust in the pocket, move up a little bit, and then be able just to hit McBride there. For some reason, he doesn't. He's able to kind of scramble, get around, sees if he can make a play. McBride actually even follows where he's going to go to try to pick up, at least for that. He just has a rusher and Rousseau in his face. He's not able to get there. He just tries to see if he can turn the corner and isn't able to get far enough. Now, the third down play that's after this is the one where I think you get to see some of Kyler being able to make plays in the pockets. Yeah, so you can see Kyler, he's reading at least. He's got command where he's reading for Trey McBride, looking at it. You can say, hey, McBride's open back there in the end zone. But take a look at least what you've got right here. You can notice, just that it seems like he's about to throw the ball to McBride. He's ready. He goes, and he's about to throw. The defense gets their hands up. So right there in that spot, what you got to say is, hey, like, you're already in your motion. You're on the way up. You have to basically make a snap decision. Do you try to throw with wonky mechanics off balance? Do you have to maybe try to see if you can get higher? Because Kyler's a shorter quarterback. Defenses are told, collapse the pocket, keep him in, put your hands up. Now, he's also in a spot where he's not able to necessarily go right through, then run for that first down. He's got a guy who's already looking to fill in. So what does he do? He looks and kind of just extends a little bit of time in the pocket. You can see Paris Johnson's a little bit off as far as for his play. He kind of gets around to the outside. He gets a little bit shoved off. He comes back to be able to give Kyler a nice block. So that's one of those things of good awareness where you can see he doesn't give up on the play. Kyler is able to run forward, and right there at that spot, Michael Wilson has recognized, hey, this is exactly Kyler's coming there. I just got to get open. He gets open, and you can also see them this play, the big body of Michael Wilson does a great job of being able to, when he gets the ball and gets hit, he hangs on, and the Cardinals are able to score on their first series of the game.
Yeah, just how you pointed out. And this is why a lot of times I wish they'd work with, and I've heard many things about this, that once a quarterback is a quarterback and like he's been in the league for 6 years, there's a lot of things that you can't work out of them, because now you're just like, this is who you are naturally. So there's not much that we can do and we can coach you out of and change or anything like that. So his footwork is the one that I always have an issue with, because a lot of times you want to have that base, but of course, if you have that base, that means your shoulders are squared. They're kind of parallel to the hash marks and whatnot. And at that point, when you're going to release that perfect ball, you do that, but that means you drop lower, which means it's harder for Kyler's vision when he has to drop lower than he needs to be. So he kind of has to stand a little bit taller in the pocket, which means, his feet are just always going to be like kind of jittery. And then the looping, I'm not sure if this is just something that he's just naturally doing because he knows he needs to bail from the pocket or wants to bail from the pocket. So he just kind of like, instead of keeping both hands on the ball, kind of has it down here, kind of loops it around. Well, when he does that and he hitches, the issue is that defenses get reset, and then they, in their minds, they're like, okay, well, that's an extra half a second now that we have before he either throws the ball or bails from the pocket. With all that being said, though, once he does initially pull back, he's looking downfield, and this is what I appreciate about him. When I saw him going for that opening, I thought to myself, he's just going to run it in. But no, he doesn't run it in. He looks down the field, and then he throws up, he delivers it to Michael Wilson, knowing that Michael Wilson has a big body, knowing that, like, if a cornerback's going to hit him, he's not going to drop that ball because of the fact that his hands are, better than what we've had with other receivers. And also his body's going to absorb that contact. So that's one of the things that I liked about that play. It ended up being a touchdown. You can't, obviously you're happy with the touchdown no matter what. But also, the decision making to, like, not have to run it in and protect your body and make sure that you find your receivers first. That's something that I was looking at in the first half with Kyler Murray that he was doing a pretty good job at.
Yeah, no, I agree and think that what we're looking at for the most part with Cardinals players is not just progress, but one of the areas there I think that you want to have is this idea of a complete offense. And in that spot, Kyler, at least for the most part, we've seen in years past, he may throw the ball, try not to take a hit, be able to see he pulls it down and then uses his legs, and he doesn't look to run. Like, you look at how those two Bills defenders did in that last play. They both ran straight toward Kyler thinking he's going to run it in. They're going to run. Kyler, he sees that. He just kind of flicks it up and over, and he doesn't have to put as much juice on the ball. He even has trust because he knows Michael Wilson's a big target. He's going to come down with the ball. He essentially is able to kind of force these defenders into conflict. And it comes away with a score on third down. And I think that's one of these places, Marcos, where when the Cardinals then took back over, it was after that Josh Allen forced fumble. Something that we were able to see with Arizona is they were able to get down the field for the most part with pretty much ease. I know that they did have to have one of the field goals that they at least settled for, but Kyler had a lot of different plays that we were able to see where it looked like he was being told by Cardinals coaches or wherever you want to look at it, to stay in the pocket. They had someone who was watching him, and he was able to actually, like, make some of those plays. And what's interesting about this too is you take a look at how the offense was functioning. This is a great example, I think, of one of those plays for Kyler. So this is 3rd and 4. You're on the 35-yard line. You spread everyone out, and this is probably going to be a passing down. Maybe you could try to run it with, they got Amari DiMercado back there in the backfield. You got 2 guys on each side for the most part. You got McBride with one side. You got Marv, Dortch on the other one with Michael Wilson. They rush 4 for the Bills. You can see at least you got a decent pocket here for the most part, but you'll take a look. Everyone is covered downfield. The only one that you hit is Amari DiMercado right over there is the check down. This is almost exactly the sort of read that you would want to make because the way that this play works and why you have some of those plays is if you give guys running upfield, that puts this defender into conflict because if you watch how he plays, someone's going to have to take the running back. And in this case, it would either have to be someone like Von Miller would have to come off of there. So you blitz from the other side. You're also going to have to probably let your safety come up. And then your other, I believe this is the cornerback would have to come down. They both end up taking it here. And part of that is you got Marvin Harrison Jr. all the way over here. They make sure they've got 2 guys at least under the bracket to tackle, keep everything in front. Get only a little away with the jersey pull there on Trey McBride, but that's how it works. Kyler instead just instantly goes, hey, look, we got 4 yards we got to go for the most part. This defender is already heading the opposite way. He falls down trying to go back because he realizes, hey, look, Dortch is wide open there. Kyler looks, instead of hitting him, Kyler wisely realizes this is the one to go, makes a split-second decision, floats the ball out, an easy first down that you're able to pick up a whole bunch of yards with to the running back. Those are some of the areas that we didn't really see in Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Because in Cliff's offense, you have 4 guys are rushing, you drop back. If they blitz someone, you're going to have 5-on-5. Someone's probably going to get beat. All of a sudden, Kyler's having to figure out how to run, to scramble, or he's having to quickly hit one of those other guys, either on a bubble screen or some other type of look. This is more of one of those pro offense looks where you're talking about out of the shotgun on 3rd down, where he doesn't try to force the ball in. He even actually is adjusting his arm angle. It's not like he's keeping the ball low. He's like, hey, Von Miller's right there. Now how I can get around Von Miller? By adjusting the arm angle, floating it out with touch, get it right to the running back. These are some of the plays we saw in the first half, and what really kind of changed as we got to the second half, Marcos, was that the pass rush for the Bills started getting home, and the run defense for the Bills adjusted as well. That's something that I think was a huge difference in the game, and then there's also, of course, the defensive side of the ball in addition.
He's run that concept before. He's had that back guy, that running back in the backfield, do like a little bit of a wheel off the off to the flat and whatnot. Um, that was not typically a mirrored concept. It was supposed to be paired with
Right.
2 outs, and so McBride was running the out to the field side. No, the boundary. And the field side was the dig by Marvin Harrison. So that's the one that's an anticipation throw. So that I want the chemistry to get better between Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison. And that specific situation, that's supposed to be like a chemistry anticipation reps, basically. Reps not only on the field, but that should be something they should be practicing and like in camp and what no, not in camp, but like during practice and whatnot, that they should be anticipating somebody getting wide open with that specific look. Because I believe that specific look was it was a type of quarters coverage. And the good thing is, like, when the coverage sank, which is something that you talk about with coaches all the time when they're reading quarterbacks, is like, if you see the defense sink to try to take everything deep, then you hit the running back, but you hit him right away or you get the ball to him. And if there's like nobody within 10 yards of him, you let that guy make the play. And that's exactly what happened. That's a good decision on his part. Part of the reason why I believe that the PFF graded him like favorably, he actually graded better than Josh Allen during that game, was because he made decisions like that. Because in a QB area, when you passed up the dig, okay, that you can live with that if you're gonna try to move the sticks with the decision, like getting it to DeMarcado. Because I think in that situation, if you do hit the dig with Marvin Harrison, he gets a catch, he gets the yardage, and that's good because people get excited about the chemistry. But he's probably getting tackled right there. He's probably not gaining more than like another 2 to 3 yards. Where I think Amari gained 24 yards on that run and whatnot, and he was like just wide open, just going to the outside. So that's one of those situations where people like JT. I've been watching a lot of JT O'Sullivan. They would say like that's a good decision, and like I could live with that decision, and that's a good decision. Get whatever you can. The guy, there was nobody within like 10 yards around him. You make that throw, and as you made that decision, you made the decision when you looked at your progressions, didn't see what you liked, and then you gave it to the running back. He got 24 yards. Good play right there.
Yeah, no question. I think the thing we saw also in the first half was the Buffalo Bills were, in a point, not doing very well in terms of penalties. They had some poorly timed penalties. I think of Josh Allen's first, what would have been rushing touchdown, that actually was called back because of the holding call that was in place. You also can talk at least about how that was a huge difference, because instead of it being a 10-3 game, Cardinals were able to get the ball, drive down, and score made it 17-3 with 2 minutes and 40 seconds left in the half. I think that at the end of what we saw to finish the half was a huge swing, unfortunately, for Buffalo Bills on the defensive side of the ball. And a lot of that really kind of starts at least with the run game. So here you can see, at least with Arizona, you've got the 2 guys there in the fit. You've got one guy lined up on the outside, at least.
Looks like a bear front
down at the bottom. Yeah. And you can see at least here that they're running, at least you've got a basically linebacker is running there, who gets mixed up with one of their linemen, I think, at least there. Spencer Brown, it looks like, moved to the other side. They're at least able to get forward a few yards for the most part with that. You can see how they have the pursuit angle from the back end from Zaven Collins there. There's 2 minutes left, 2nd and 9. This is a key spot, at least for the most part, where if you're a Cardinals person, you're looking at the situation saying, hey, if we can hold them here, either an incomplete pass, stop it, make it like 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, that's going to be a good spot. So this is where part of Josh Allen and some of the Bills' protection came into play, because you can see here, they've got 4 guys rushing him. They drop back 7. You've got pretty much what looks like most people covered, but when you look at how he does, there's one player who does end up being a little bit far out. This is with Sean Murphy Bunting, I believe, is the one who's playing on that side. He ends up playing a bit more of the off coverage. You can see here whether it was communication, whether it was communication mix-up between I think it's Williams or with how Murphy Bunting was. You can see here they're keeping that cover with one side of the field on that guy, one side of the field here, another over on this spot here. And the pass rush for the Cardinals doesn't get there in time as far as for that one. I think that, like you said, it's not like this is a quick slant. This is one of those places where you want to see if you can have one of your guys be able to beat someone. Here it even looks like this is one of those things where you don't want to say it, but let's say that 93 is supposed to be running a stunt here. Like everyone's seen a stunt before. Stunts where you'd have one inside guy will usually then run around the other player and then get a free rush if they're able to see it blocked right. It's a good way to be able to kind of mix up a lot of defenders because sometimes you'll be able to design that stunt where it works out really well. I don't know if that was the intent here. It looks like maybe what they were trying to do is see if they could bait Josh Allen into running. Whatever the case was, this is just one of those places where the lack of pressure and that cushion at the top is just something that's a little bit too much cushion. Now, that being said, you stop him short of the first down. You kind of at least did your job. That's not too bad as far as I'm concerned from the defensive back. You don't want to obviously have the missed tackle. But it does bring up at least here I think this is the third down play. They had a penalty at least for them. Oh, no, it's the 3rd and 6 at least. Yeah, they're 3rd and 1, had a small false start penalty. It's now 3rd and 6. Huge advantage at least here if you can get them to stop. They punt, you get the ball back and ready to go up potentially with another score for the most part with some time left and all 3 timeouts. But this is where we've seen the Cardinals defense is not quite there yet. The motion, at least, it looks like Dalton Schultz outside for that part. You've got Dalton Kincaid at least up over on the... I think it's going to be, actually, I don't think Kincaid's on the screen right now. Pardon me, at least there. You've got your 3 wide receivers who are set up there instead. So you can see with this one, they at least are able to rush 4 for the most part again. This is the rush 4, drop 7. They have a lot of this where they run as far as the Cardinals go. You can see Dennis Gardeck is trying to see if he can get around. They just, for one reason or another, do not quite have, whether it's the burst or whether it's just one of the areas of coaching. I think in this situation, you would want to be that nose tackle, push back the guard to be able to give Gardeck a lane at the quarterback. Now, maybe he has to stay on the outside at least to look for the running back on the way out for that passing pattern. Sometimes there's only so much you can tell about what's intended versus what there was. But here you can see that Cardinals cover everyone that incredibly well. You've got coverage here in this spot where as soon as Allen starts to throw that ball, you can see at least that the linebacker is going to be ready to make the play. I think it's 51, so I think it's Chris Barnes is the one who's out there ready to make the play, stays with him on the option route. You could probably be able to make that throw, but you might not be able to get the first down. They've got 2 guys there at least on the other man downfield. So this is one of those places where you'd say perfect. Like you can get him dead to rights, Gardeck at least stunting around. Josh Allen scrambles out of the pocket, runs down the field, and take a look at least at where the ball goes. You can see here that right down at the bottom of your screen, you're at least looking at number 10. He sees what's happening with Allen running around, and the coverage a little bit in the middle of the field is, at least from where I can tell, whether it's looking across the field at this side, you can see even that they get a little bit mixed up and he's a split second late. Max Melton, in fact, actually, in terms of that cover, it looks like, I think from what I can tell, you got one spot here, you got the safety deep, and then you've got the other spot here. He's watching, reading Josh Allen's eyes. He gets up there immediately to see if he can try to be able to hit him. What happens instead of actually hitting him? He doesn't knock the ball free. Maybe he's thinking, hey, we can knock the ball free at him. Maybe it's just like, I'll hit him, knock him down. Guys in the NFL are a little bit stronger than you are. That's Khalil Shakir, number 10, I believe, also. That turns it from being, about 1 minute and 30 seconds or so left with the clock running into a big play for Buffalo, unfortunately, as they then get across the 50-yard line. They're almost in field goal range. So that's one of those cases where when you're talking about rookie mistakes, it's not a huge mistake, but you're talking about a game of inches. A completion that lands here at this side of the 40 versus an additional 10 yards after the catch makes a big deal when it's talking about just the 2-minute drill that the Bills are running here.
Yeah, that's why it's such an issue to play against quarterbacks that extend plays like that, because the coverage was perfect for the first 2.5 seconds that a play develops, and then the rest of the play is just do I have expectations about Kazir White being like a lockdown coverage guy? No, I don't, because he's not gonna focus on the side that someone like Josh Allen is looking towards afterwards, because there was no reason for him to pick up that slot receiver right there in that hook zone area, because Josh Allen looked like he was targeting at the very least the field side of the concept. The play broke down. Everybody's, in scramble mode at that point. You see Josh Allen do his little, the quarterbacks twist out and, try to look for somebody downfield. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, Max Melton making that decision of not wrapping up and, trying to knock the ball loose or whatnot, or just trying to lay a big hit on him. Ended up, kind of like blowing up in his face because he was the one who was actually on the ground after that hit was made. So, I mean, it's just, that's what makes it so hard to play against someone like Josh Allen to begin with. He's gonna find somebody. He's either gonna scramble like you saw just there, or he's just gonna, he's a big body, so it's hard to take him down sometimes, and he's just not gonna take that sack. Just he's just not gonna fall, even if you have his jersey, you're falling or whatnot. It's hard to get somebody like that big down on the ground. Hey, you're mute.
Yeah, thanks, Marcos. One of the things that I think you can see also is the Cardinals kind of wasted their first sack as far as with getting a penalty, because Zaven Collins was at least able to, and this is one of those things you can call is it's more of a coverage sack. You can see here that the only guy who's really available for the most part, at least, is right over here screaming across the side of the field. Actually gets a little bit of the inside leverage on Budda Baker, but he's got too many bodies around him. So this is what we talk about as far as getting pressure, is that they, at least with the Cardinals, have a kind of dialed up play where they bring a fifth person. They drop back Mac Wilson into coverage. And you can see here that they're a little bit late in getting over to take account for it. That's a nice big shove. Josh Allen gets taken down, but of course it gets called off for a penalty. That's one of those areas that is unfortunate because you essentially have gotten them off of the field. It's a long field goal if they're even going to attempt it. The wind, as you can see here, it's blowing back in their direction. So I wouldn't even think that they would attempt a field goal here if that's a sack. But nope, they end up going and getting it by the head, and that ends up being a play where the next play, Keon Coleman at least is able to get outside. This is just a straight mesh concept, essentially, for the most part. Well, I think it's a little bit more of a mesh, but with the running back is the one running mesh. So they're able to at least force, and you can see here that it's a little bit late for Kaiser to get over. Some of that, too, is whether it's zone or man. If you're playing zone, he's got to stay in his zone. And so what that does is, at least, is you can see how both man coverage and zone coverage can be effective. If they're playing man
linebacker.
Yeah, linebacker at least there.
Kaiser White.
Yep, and that's where it's in. Yeah, right there with Kaiser. You can see this is one of those spots where whatever, at least as far as for how the coverage goes underneath, Chris Barnes does his job right, because if he continues with Keon Coleman, what you could
that running back is open.
Yeah, the running back's open. Now, that being said, Kaiser could run down and grab him, but it may not be a man coverage call. A man coverage call is one of those areas where then he would be one watching the running back. If you suddenly flip zones and then Chris Barnes stops and goes back to his zone, suddenly you got a wide open blown coverage. It's one of those cases where he looks like he's trying to read over the middle of the field to be able to see if he can read Josh Allen's eyes. He's standing there looking like they're going for this concept to try to stand underneath. Instead, he just is able to quickly hit the concept, and Keon Coleman is going to beat Kaiser in a speed race. So that's one of those things that kept that first drive going. And of course, as we know, Josh Allen is going to, I believe that he, if he doesn't take it in himself, it's going to be Keon Coleman on this drive. I know he does run at least for that other drive. Good job by Jalen Thompson to actually take him down. But here's the Josh Allen where he runs across the goal line. This is just one of those athletic, big quarterback plays. You can see they're kind of just set up in a simple shotgun formation. Guys are more spread out. They fake the handoff. He just kind of runs through on the outside. This would be probably not as much, I would say, as much of, some people are going to consider this an RPO. I think it's probably the closest thing to it. There's probably a better description, but right here, he's reading the outside defender, reading Xavier Thomas. He's going to keep it because look at Xavier. He gets inside a little bit too much. Now, if Xavier stays outside to kind of contain that edge, he just hands it off to the running back who runs it inside. This is one of those things we've seen Kyler Murray do countless times. So you can't fault the Bills for taking advantage of it. Xavier Thomas gives up a little bit too much, and Josh Allen gets that score. You now have it where the Cardinals are going into the second half only up by 7 points versus up by 17-3, and it took quite a bit to get there as far as with the penalties or other force, but you just kind of have to come back out. The Bills are getting the ball in the second half. Ultimately, this was a good first half for the Cardinals, but it really did fall apart in the second half, Marcos.
Yeah, unfortunately it did. Most of it was because of a momentum swing. They did the whole, this is something that I like when teams do this, when they defer, like the coin toss, and then they get the ball right before the half, and then they score a touchdown, and then when they come back out with the ball, they score another touchdown. So it becomes a 14-point swing. That's what I would like. I wish we would have done back in 2016 with that 2016 Cardinals, team that we continuously kept accepting it. We deferred it. No, we took the ball first. Yeah, we took the ball in the first half, and then the second half we gave it back to the opposing team. So we're not talking about that team, obviously. We're talking about right now. That momentum really did. I mean, they just went back to basics on their side, and I mean, I haven't been paying attention too much to the defense, more so than I've been the offense in this game for obvious reasons. But they really did just go back to like, hey, we're gonna pound this. And I mean, Josh Allen was pushing the ball downfield. He was taking advantage of a bunch of those calls, especially like on that cover 3 call that I was talking about, where you have your corners playing top down. They're making sure that they're not giving up the advantage over the top, that they're not getting stacked by these wide receivers. So essentially, they're just giving up down below. And of course, when you do that, hitch routes, out routes, comeback routes, it doesn't matter. Anything that has a wide receiver put his foot on the ground and come back to the ball, it's going to take advantage of those type of calls and those type of looks and whatnot. And it seems like in this defense by Nick Rawlis and Jonathan Gannon, they are playing a lot of zone coverage. I think it's like that because they don't trust what the bodies are out there doing. They don't have like that bona fide corner that I like to call, the one that you always have in man
Sauce
coverage.
Gardner, no Patrick Peterson to be found, unfortunately. And that's part of with this Cardinals rebuild is there's talent. So what we can also say about this Cardinals rebuild as well is the pass rush. So with Arizona, we can say, at least as far as with how the team has kind of functioned, they've really had to not be able to dial up the pressure without being able to get blitzes. So let's take a look at the defense here, at least for the most part. So what you've got is you've got your 5 offensive linemen here. You got a tight end on either side with a running back in the backfield. Arizona's basically playing that 5 down lineman front with the 2 guys reading the coverage. This is one of those plays where the alignment that you see with Arizona is doing at least a good job of selling against the run. Now, this play here on 3rd down, you got trips right. You're at least able to see the running back motions outside. You've got one defender who looks like he's going to be up there in, looks like it's going to be man coverage. That's going to be Sean Murphy Bunting. And in this play, what they do is they bring Mac Wilson off of the edge. So when you're talking about the Cardinals have had issues with bringing edge rushers or other items, they bring him off the edge, and then they have a blitz right up the middle. What they do in that spot that's kind of fun is you overload that one side of the field. You can see you've got 3 people running. Now, the way to go, at least in this spot for Josh Allen, is he's supposed to go and hit the outside man on a quick throw, but Wilson reads it and knocks the pass down. This is one of those things where you're like, this is a good defensive play because this is something where everyone's covered. If he gets it over your head or to someone else, like you can at least see there, he's going to get that ball. You're going to have 2 blockers in front. You're probably going to pick up a couple of yards. They get this pass breakup. So now it's going to end up being 3rd and 10 now on the 11-yard line. They can still pick up the first, but this is your chance to hold the Bills to a field goal. Now, at the same time, they spread you out. Cardinals mug up the A-gaps. You can see that Zaven Collins is lined up at least on the inside. Looks like it's got their best pass rushers are available. They look like they're ready to bring the house. This looks like a cover 0 sort of call. Now, what the case is, it looks like at the top, you could be looking at 2-man coverage here for the most part, bringing an extra man down as far as like, I think this would be called a fire zone blitz, what I believe, don't quote me on that, but as far as it goes, you essentially bring up the extra players, blitz more guys up the center. So that way, when these guys run their coverages, you still have a man over the top, and you still have some corner coverage. This is where you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. They bring 7, all of them over the top at least. So everyone's in single coverage. And you can tell that it bites them. They're trying to see if they can get people in the way, be able to disrupt the pass. They don't end up getting the play that they're looking for with Matt Collins. Jalen Thompson at least gets over there a bit late. This is one of those places where, as far as with Rallis goes, you'd love to be able to see, at least at some point, a little bit more of the drop back at sometimes of back and forth. But other times, you're just like, hey, it's 3rd and 10. We want to go blitz everyone that's there, but let's get our hands up for the most part. It's really a weird call. This is one of those places where I probably wouldn't have rushed that cover 0 for the most part, especially when you're looking at Xavier Thomas on the outside. I know that he's not going to be someone who's going to drop back into coverage. You want Buda Baker essentially as the one guy who fires. I think what they're looking for here is overload that one side of the field, try to see if they can collapse the pocket, get your hands up. Buda is actually screaming in for the most part late. Josh Allen just calmly goes, hits that slant over the middle. This is one of those fails by the Cardinals defense. I don't know if you can say it's scheme fail or player fail, but either way, this is a critical third down, and it allowed the Bills to essentially get back into the game. Now there you can even see a better example of Hollins. For those of you listening on our podcast might not be able to see, but Josh Allen throws the ball and you get two guys who are looking to bat it down. They do not get to the ball either way though.
Yeah, it was a gamble, that's for sure. And it's one of those situations, yeah, you see the double, the double mugs right there. Kaiser White knows he's not getting there, so he just kind of tries to drop into that underneath hook to see if he can bat the ball down. It was just a big gamble because if the pressure doesn't get there, you have everybody one-on-one with a lot of space. And unfortunately, that was our boy Jalen Thompson who was going one-on-one with Matt Collins. And I think Matt Collins, what is he, like 6'3"?
Yeah, he's like 6'2" or so. And this is a call that I don't really fault the defense as much for that. Like you said, this is a gamble. If you sack Josh Allen or are able to get pressure on him, that's great. But I just don't think that this is one of those places where when you're talking about setting up for success, Josh Allen's too good of a quarterback because he's going to see the blitz, he's going to read the blitz, he's going to hit his guy. That's where I think this was one of those places where I would just say is not a good defensive play call, at least by the defensive coordinator, to go with that cover zero look. And we saw this in the second half where the Bills were able to line up the ball and run it on Arizona. But when it came to those critical third downs, Josh Allen was either taking the ball himself or properly reading the defense. There were no sacks on the day outside of the one that was taken off of the board for Zaven Collins. That's something where it felt like the defense in the second half, they just were not able to get that stop. So you had 17 points quickly turned into 34 points, especially because the Bills were able to score after that Kyler Murray sack that he took. And this is where I think we can flip to and talk a little bit about that second half, because Marcos, what really stood out in the second half, I think, to a lot of Cardinals fans was that the Cardinals run game seemed like it disappeared. They didn't really even gain a whole 100 yards of offense in the second half. There wasn't targeting of Marvin Harrison Jr., and there was a lot more pressure on Kyler Murray. And I think a lot of us can point to and say, what was the biggest difference between the first half and the second half? I think it's twofold. The first one we have to talk about is Jonah Williams is out for the rest of the game, and Kelvin Beachum comes in, and it looked like he got his lunch given to him or handed to him by Von Miller off of the right tackle side.
Yeah, I love Calvin Beachum, but like that's hard to have him, basically switch from being like the primary left tackle during like preseason and whatnot, and then hey, Jonah Williams, which I mean our favorite guy, Jonah Williams, goes out the rest of the game, and now you're gonna have to take over on right tackle, and but guess what, Greg Rousseau and what's gonna call it, and of course Von Miller out there, so you're gonna have to primarily line up having to defend from them. And it's like, that's a tall task for them to ask, especially of somebody like Calvin Beachum. But it wasn't just that, so just like I mentioned, once you fall behind, part of the playbook now becomes a situation where you can't access it. You can't run certain plays, because if you're going to be a chunk yardage, gain the ball like little by little, like I saw a lot of like Haas being called. I saw a lot of like I forgot what the play call was, but these are like short yardage type of calls that have like an over the ball route with a couple of hitches to the outside, and they'll have like those calls primarily to basically replace the run and the screen game, because that's what they're designed to do. They're designed to not let the quarterback get any pressure and get the ball out quick, which once again is the reason why you see someone like Greg Dortch and Trey McBride get more targets than your outside receivers, your X and your Y that are the outside that are working with their either one-on-ones or whatnot. So when you have that type of a game plan and you're trying to burn the clock, you can't do that when your offense falls behind and your defense is giving up points. So at that point, you have to start trying to look towards pushing the ball, and that was an issue. It definitely was an issue, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna fully go on the whole vision thing that I've talked about with Kyler Murray and his vision of not being able to like scan the entirety of the field, or if it's a combination of that and like the pressure was just not allowing him to. But we've known this about Kyler Murray, that the vision has been something that he's had to work with, and the only way to work with that is chemistry. chemistry with your wide receivers, especially with Michael Wilson, especially with Marvin Harrison. He did, play with Michael Wilson last year, but you got to remember there was like 5 or 6 games in a row where Michael Wilson wasn't the primary target for him. It
Right.
was Trey McBride. And it wasn't
Yeah.
until what was it, like the last game of the season, where he was actually going to Michael Wilson time and time again because he had developed that chemistry. Well, when you go during the off season and you're doing drills and you don't have any practice other than, just practicing, not like preseason practice like you would when you see live snaps, it's going to be hard for him to try to trust what he's seeing, where he's
Yeah.
throwing, what's being called to the outside, so he can keep pushing the ball downfield. I feel like it's going to take like maybe 1 or 2 more games before they actually start developing that chemistry to the outside. But for now, I think this is what we're going to get. I think we're going to get more targets to Greg Dortch and Trey McBride until that gets hashed out.
Yeah, unlike one of the things you brought up, Haas, which I think is, for those aren't familiar with football terminology, it would be hitches outside, and then you've got your, I think it's called a
Seam routes.
seam route. That's right, hitches outside, seam. So like a way as far as for visualizing that for those on our video stream, you're going to be running quick, short routes over there, and then the real primary targets are going to be kind of in the middle of the field. In this case, what you have though is your normal X receiver and Marvin Harrison Jr. has been replaced with Trey McBride and Greg Dortch. As far as their game, they're also, at least for some of those passing concepts, when they're trying to swing guys outside, they're trying to take advantage of what the Buffalo Bills are doing, of being able to have a missing safety in Teron Johnson, and knowing that if you can keep Marvin Harrison Jr., he's taking one of those safeties outside with him, then you can at least know that you're going to have someone like a Dortch or a Trey McBride that's going to be open. We did see, at least, of course, the one drop from Marvin Harrison Jr. It looked like when he ran and then kind of came back that he either didn't come all the way back to the ball or something was there as far as with the timing. He had to kind of dive for it. It seemed like he maybe slipped a bit, but without blaming some of that, like you said, Marcos, this is where you're going to say, I'm not going to be featuring Marvin. If I'm going to feature Marvin, I bring him inside into that slot spot for the most part and then use him on one of those targets. It's not something we saw the Cardinals do. And that's where I think that if there is a change to be made, it may have to be there. As far as the other big change, Marcos, let's talk at least about what the Bills did in adjusting in the run game, because I think this is the most important thing to look at here as far as why the Cardinals ran the ball so well in the first half and not in the second half. Here you can see, at least, they've got everyone lined up for the most part. This is one of those exact same types of plays that we were able to see in the first half. They do a difference as far as they bring, I believe it's going to be Trey McBride into the backfield. It's kind of in that H-back, fullback almost type of role. Now here with the Bills, you can see here there's one big difference, at least when James Conner, he's going to start taking off, gets around over here to that side. And let's take a look now. Remember, in the first half, we had counted there were 2 linebackers that they had back in front of the front four. How many guys do you count now? You count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 total. They brought an extra man down into the box. So you've got essentially 3 linebackers that are playing here for the most part. And that's one of the biggest differences, was they changed how their coverage worked to focus more on taking away the run. As you can see, Cardinals don't get a bodies advantage here. They don't get the extra push. They at least are trying to see if they can bring McBride over to see if they can run and block him into one of those guys, but they end up with a mismatch where they're able to kind of push James Conner out and not let him get the edge. That was the biggest difference that I saw, Marcos, was that the Cardinals are wanting to keep establishing the run in the second half. And the Buffalo Bills said, all right, you know what? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and play some of that while we're knowing that you're going to run the ball. They're at least giving up. If Kyler wanted to be able to motion something out of play action here to Marv, he could. But the Bills know, hey, this is going to be a spot where they're wanting to run the ball here on this play. You can see there's kind of their bread and butter play that we were talking about running in the first half. They've got the center pulling. They got the guard pulling around. James Conner's at least reading. And the cutback lanes that used to be there because there are 3 guys are not there now. This, to me, is one of those places where it felt like that the Cardinals needed to adjust some, but didn't quite adjust fast enough. And that's something I think you got to talk about, whether it's with Drew Petzing, because I don't think that this is necessarily an execution problem on the players. I think this is a spot of clearly Buffalo's loading the box. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys that are over there in the box. They got 1 guy outside. This is a fully loaded front. You need to be able to make sure that you get that mismatch. They're all lined up over here. This is one of the things the Cardinals were trying to do. And Buffalo said, all right, we've been run over this half. We're not going to let you run over us anymore. One of the things that I think is interesting also too is you look at where the Cardinals are running on this side, and they're running at least over to Kelvin Beacham's side. You look at Beacham, at least is kind of having to push Ed Oliver out of the way. Yes, I think that is, yeah, because they've got their other tight ends. This is the 13 personnel call, I believe, with Marv and all of those guys over here. That leads us, of course, to this last down on 3rd and 6. And this is what I think Cardinals fans, unfortunately, are going to be familiar with. You've got now, instead of that rundown, you've got the 2 guys back over here for the most part. You've got what looks to be kind of like your cloud coverage. You got your safety looking at Marv over the top. Other safeties down here with the trips. Buffalo lines up their 2 guys in the A gap, and they bring a blitz. Now, this is one of those places where if you are the Cardinals, you're probably going to be trying to hit Dortch as quick as possible if you can try to pick up some yardage, or you want your route to have one of these guys to be able to either get hit on a quick comeback. Either the way that the trips was supposed to work either didn't quite get there. Like Greg Dortch even looks like he knows that he's just the safety valve. Marvin, for what it's worth, it looks like he's running this route just trying to shove the guy out of the way. I'm not sure if this was a play designed to Trey McBride, is what it very well could be, pulling the 2 guys away, trusting Trey to be able to make it. He doesn't get time. Kyler Murray has that blitz coverage over the front. They bring 7 and Lee Fine. It's not a cover 0 play by any means, but they bring extra pressure, and Arizona is not able to get him enough time. So this is probably where you can see how the most egregious of where they get overloaded is right from the middle of the field. You can see at least that Froholt has to basically kind of not like let him go, but this is one of those places of avoiding a holding call. So Amari DiMercato, he picks up that 1 blitz. Froholt, at least for the most part, tries to shove the other guy out of the way. They do a good job on this blitz design, so credit at least to the Bills there of being able to essentially stunt their way into that. Because of how it worked with that stunt, you can see there's a mix-up between Froholt and DiMercato. DiMercato takes number 39 for a hold. At least seems like he's looking at 43. He starts to come back to 39. And he's trying to put it, but it ends up by that time that the edge rush has already gotten to Kyler Murray. So Kyler's about to try to bail out because that's what you can do versus the blitz. If they bring everybody, a lot of times you say run into the blitz. He tries to be able to take off, and Rousseau just gets around Paris Johnson. That's one of those things where sometimes you got to credit like a defense, and this is a case of the edge rushers on this end. You've got Kelvin Beacham on the other end. You can at least see here that there's just no shot for Kyler Murray if he's not able to get out through there, and Rousseau brings him down. We saw this a lot, unfortunately, in the second half on these 3rd and long calls, Marcos, and a lot of it, unfortunately, did come from that right side with Kelvin Beacham. He was a guy who lining up one-on-one in coverage. We saw them adjust the plays. We saw the Cardinals even roll Kyler sometimes to the left. They even ran the ball to the left. They didn't seem to trust Beacham to be someone they could run the ball with. It felt like they scaled their playbook down. And normally in that spot, when you say the Bills, they are selling out against the run. The Cardinals, they're at least trying to see if they can get the ball out quick while these pass rushers are getting there. You didn't really have a real screen call. You didn't really have anything from under center to try to kind of establish the run on the first few plays. See, like this is one of these great examples here. You can see here on this spot, Kyler Murray, they know that they've got Kelvin Beacham as a underwhelmed mismatch. They're going to say, we got to stop Rousseau. So they let McBride releases at least to make sure they have a pass set. He doesn't even chip. They at least have Connor immediately turns to that side. They move Kyler in the pocket a bit to the left to try to give him a little bit of room back to the right. This is because you can see Von Miller is not on the field. They're at least looking to try to just do something. He gets the ball out, but look at how quickly he's already under pressure. And this time it's because I believe it's Froholt is the one who gets beat. He just comes underneath, and Kyler takes a hit, but he gets the ball out, gets it Dortch. Kyler took a lot more hits in the second half. There was just guys in the backfield a lot more often. And even when you look at one of these play calls with Kyler, like changing up the play, getting there in the backfield, seeing that they're going to be bringing guys over the middle, they decide that they're going to go ahead and run a play that's going to be trying to get the ball to James Conner. It looks like is that the design is Kyler, for one reason or another, he's reading where the blitz is over the middle. He's looking for what looks like Elijah Higgins on the crosser route. And this would be honestly a probably first down call if Higgins is able to get around there a little bit quicker. You can see here, they already have 3 bodies all mismatched up. He just kind of sits down in the route, like almost like he's waiting for a quick pass, doesn't continue the route. James Conner is just waving his hands like crazy. And that's where I think Marcos, what we can talk about with this Cardinals team here is this was the game-changing play with Gregory Rousseau on the back end. You can see at least with how they've got it lined up where they are able to get to Kyler Murray from off the edge, and they're able to force that fumble. And at this point, the Bills go down and score, and you realize the Cardinals were not going to, I think, at least score any offensive touchdowns for the rest of the game. But that's the spot right there with Kyler pulling the ball down, Marcos, that we can talk about there.
Yeah, just like I keep mentioning, that's something you can't coach him out of at this point, because like it's been through 2 regimes now, and most of the time I know what he's trying to do, but that long looper that he does, where you kind of wish he would keep 2 hands on the ball, and then when he's about to release, he kind of like does the whole baseball, throw, like like the baseball pitchers type of throw. I wanted to say something about that last play. That was a well-designed blitz. That was great on that stunt up front. Also, one of the things that I once again hope that gets fixed because of more reps, more live reps, is there was no side adjust to that. So side adjusts are usually like you tell your wide receiver, whatever side it is, yo, they're coming, they're bringing the blitz. Don't run a full, hey, you're running a go route up the side. No, you're gonna side adjust. You're either gonna cut your route short, stem it short, or do a comeback, because the ball has to get out because they're coming after me. There was no side adjust. Usually when you see quarterbacks go over and look over to a wide receiver, they point at somebody, they go like this to both sides, or they just like point at the receiver points back. That's because they're in sync with each other, saying like, okay, I'm giving it to you because they're bringing in the kitchen, they're bringing in the heat. Of course, good on the Bills, defense to be able to time that, so that they started in the second level, those 2 middle linebackers, or the 2 linebackers that were in the hook zone area, they came down right before the snap came off. So of course, at that point, that's when you see all your people lining up at the line of scrimmage. So they did a really good job staying disciplined, not giving the tell that they were bringing in the blitz, and it worked out perfectly because there was no side adjust, there was no hot throw. That I didn't see a hot route in that concept. So Kyler Murray really didn't have anywhere to throw that ball, and unfortunately, he took a sack. Once again, that's something that has to be ironed out between all the offense, the wide receivers, the QB, and also the offensive coordinator. And then the play after that, which was the other play where you took the sack. Once again, didn't see anything having to do with anybody trying to get open, and it just 100% just kind of looked like. So when you saw Higgins stop on that route, you also saw another in coming in. So it was like double ins. I believe it was Greg Dortch who was also running the in route. They just kind of sat. They sat when they ran into the coverage. So they ran into coverage and just kind of sat. And like when
Trey looked like he was trying to get off of coverage and got a little bit roughhoused, and it seemed like it was one of those timing plays where if you need to go bang, bang, it was kind of a bang,
you have to move.
Bang. Yeah, and I agree with you that's one of those areas, at least, of even if you're going to go and sit there as far as for some of the places, it looked like the way they designed that play was Trey McBride, Elijah Higgins run this way. Either Elijah Higgins is supposed to kind of pull the man and go underneath while they're focusing on McBride, or McBride runs up, Higgins is over there. There's a little bit of mix-up. He's just able to flip his hips and then kind of get upfield. It was late, and part of the reason it was also late is because it was rushed with, like you said, that blitz look. There needed to be either a hot route or something, or what I would have thought the hot route would have been on James Conner. Now, as far as the pass rush goes, it didn't stop there. So the Arizona Cardinals now are back into the 4th quarter of the game. We're going to look real quick as we finish up our show with the 2 last shots that they have. So this one's with 5 minutes left for the most part. And I believe that on the previous play, this is the one that was a nice little kind of outside screen they're trying to design to Trey McBride. You can see at least Kyler's already going up. He tries to float it over. It gets slightly tipped. And because of where everything goes, it goes slightly outside. So whether you want to call it either accuracy or tip or something, it comes out a little bit quick. I think that is one of those areas of just when you're running a screen for something like that. Now, I always say usually 2 hands on the ball should be a catch, but in that case, it's a screen that just doesn't go through. The next play is just a pure batted pass. This is going to be where they've got Dortch running across. They got a little bit of pre-snap motion here, which is nice. He's pointing out Dortch. He sees him moving. They adjust. You can tell pretty much this is going to be a zone coverage that they're going to be running up front for the most part. You can even see here as they drop back into that zone. Kyler knows what's coming. He's reading it. You can tell, at least right now, it's pretty obvious where he's wanting to go. He's wanting to go over here to Marvin, up over on this side. You have to kind of thread the needle between some of those players. You've got Dortch available as far as on the outside goes. You can see here, he's looking to see if he can get to Marvin over the middle. They've at least dropped back enough where he's going to then kind of just say, you know what? Instead of just throwing it here to Marvin, instead of throwing it down over here for the most part, you take the check down because look how much space you've got for James Conner. It gets swatted down. Great play by the Bills. This is one of those areas where I said, where are the screen passes? Where are some of those? It's not that they had screen passes for the pass rush. It's that there were check downs that they took or smaller passes. And you can even see on this play here, watch the outside with Kelvin Beachum. They at least were expecting this to say, hey, we're going to have James go to this side. And we know we're not going to be able to protect all day for the most part. We looked at the coverage. Everything is kept in front of them. Just hit that check down. The next play is where it really stands out as far as with the right tackle missing. Because you remember in the first half, we got to see Jonah Williams. He held up in protection long enough. Kyler's able to kind of get the ball out. It's still short. And on this play, you've got Kelvin Beachum going up against 40, Von Miller at the bottom of your screen. And Kyler just ends up running, trying to gather some movement up into the pocket. And on this play, this is one where Kelvin just gets walked back. Obviously, it's a huge mismatch. I think the only real change you could have had on this play would have been Amari DiMercato could have probably tried to chip in a little bit. It looks like, at least as far as for the play structure went, he's expecting to get the pass. Like, this would be the guy who'd be more of like the hot route that you would have to be able to hit very quickly if you can feel the guy coming off the edge. But instead, Kyler's trying to step up, at least for the most part, into and seeing if he can try to run through the pocket. And while he's staying in the pocket, looking for everyone over the middle, he gets taken out by Von Miller. This is where I think if you're going to talk about the Cardinals, they've been in a team where they're now in completely having to throw it. They can't really run the ball anymore. You probably can't have Kelvin Beachum be starting like this to be pushed back that far in these different games. Like, whether it's going to be just time or age or something like that one, it's just one of those spots of where Von Miller probably commands more attention than you're going to get. The Bills, at least on that spot, were able to trip him up. You'd still get another opportunity at the end of the game. And this is where that infamous Marvin Harrison Jr. play comes in, Marcos.
Yeah, that's the one that we the screenshot, no, this one's not it. And this one's
this is the start of the drive, which I think we wanted to go through.
But obviously, if you have two hands on the ball, Michael, you have to catch that. This was a good read because of the fact that, like, now when we're talking about like these quarters coverage type of situations, you obviously saw the corner, and the corner is playing cloud coverage by. He has to redirect the wide receiver. And at that point, when he redirects the wide receiver, he's just trying to push him either off of his route. And then now the safety goes over the top of him. That's how you play.
Yep. That's how you play quarters coverage. It's very clear quarters coverage, but also
and he's a flat defender.
Yeah. And that's, well, like you said, is if he basically goes and follows with where that is, you see Marvin, who's there right in front of it. You see also the other defender to 31. Kyler at least reads it perfectly, fits it like, yep, I got the arm strength that he throws it, actually hits Michael Wilson. Now, of course, it's a tough throw, tough catch, but one of those that I think you would probably count as a drop. Now, here, clearly you can see how the Bills have structured their defense. They got the two players here, 4 pass rushers. They've got the 2 guys over the Cardinals route concepts. You can see at least here, Arizona is looking to that one side of the screen. Marv is coming across the center where if no one goes with him, maybe he's going to be the last minute lead. Kyler actually reads this right. He throws the ball. And if you take a look, this should be a catch right there. Yeah. Michael Wilson's a big player. He's a big player. Credit to the Bills defender coming over because that is a long way to run. So look at how far he actually ends up running when he gets over there. He just reads the quarterback's eyes, goes right there and knocks the ball free. I think that Michael could have probably caught that. If you look at how the play lines up with where he throws it on the inside shoulder. Right, if you don't throw it on the outside shoulder, it's there. But really, you should catch onto the ball and know that you're going to be here taking a hit. That's part of one of the areas that you have. He instead has the ball gets hit free. So that's one of those places where it's 2nd and 10. You're like, oh, man, that would have been a great opportunity because you're all of a sudden now, if you'd caught that ball, you're in field goal range already. You've got like 2 minutes or so. I think it's just under 2 minutes left in the game. So that was the first missed opportunity that you had. This is another good look at it, I think, at least here from this angle. So you can see Kyler's having to throw it past the one player who's there. And it just kind of is, either interfered with just enough or just kind of bounces out at least because of that hit. And that's something that's just, it's a tough break. Not as tough of a break, of course, as what I would say is some of the other plays. So here, Kyler's in the 2-minute offense. They throw it to Trey McBride. They're able to get back some of the yardage underneath. That leads them to, I believe this is now 3rd and 4. So they picked up some on that. This is the one play that I think a lot of people, at least when they were talking about what the Cardinals did, were pretty glad at how it was not having to do anything more than taking what the defense gives you. They're running, I believe, at the top of the frame. They've got Michael Wilson up there. Harrison Jr.'s down here. They clearly are reading Harrison Jr. as the one spot that's there. Dortch just takes a quick flat route, and we know that he's got that 4.3 speed. He's able to accelerate, pick up the first down. Good overall read with Kyler Murray. They're just efficiently moving the ball down the field, not even running, throwing it. Gets you to this 1st and 10. Trey McBride gets the pass. You end up now with the first down. So it's 1st and 10. And this is one of those plays, at least, that Kyler Murray makes where this is the Marvin play, is what we're going to say.
This is the Marvin play.
1st and 10. Marvin Harrison Jr. is down at the bottom of your screen. You got Michael Wilson up at the top. You've got Dortch operating out of your slot. Trey McBride here. Pretty much all your best playmakers. You've got James there in the backfield. The Bills, they bring a 5th man. That's part of why he looked wide open on this play. Is the Bills at least have brought a 5th person. They try to jump up at least in front over here with James. Kyler looks back, scrambles a bit, and then you can see at least here once he starts moving and running, Greg Dortch gets open and picks up actually a 1st down. Now, let's talk about Marvin Harrison Jr. on this play. Because if you look at Kyler Murray, and he's reading at least over the middle of the defense, he sees those 2 guys are rushing. He's going to look and see who's going to be running to the middle of the field. Well, they play it really well. They've got everyone covered over the top. They've still blitzed a man, but they've got good coverage. So he's going to be looking, at least, now that they've got a numbers mismatch. This is 6 on 5. He's going to be probably trying to look a play. You could say, why didn't he hit Dortch here? And I think it's going to be pretty easy to see why he didn't hit Dortch here once you take a look at the end zone angle. So Kyler is here. They end up bringing that pass rusher, 39. Kyler goes back to hit Dortch. He jumps. Kyler's like, all right, I'm not going to try to hit the 5'8 Dortch with this guy jumping in the way. He looks back across the middle toward McBride, tries to see if he can make something come open, comes back across the field, and is able to basically see Greg Dortch, then turns back around to the other side. He gets the 1st down. Where it happened with Marvin on this play? Well, Marvin on this play, he at least is like, hey, look, Greg Dortch is there underneath. Mix up in coverage. Kyler isn't even looking there because, and this is what Dan Orlovsky broke down. You can see he'll break it down better than I could. You'll see that the way that they broke it down, he's jumping into the lane. They're trying to keep him in the pocket on kind of the 1st and 10. He looks back to his left to see if he can hit McBride. Looks like he's at least pretty close to the 1st down marker. He actually makes a smart decision because he comes back to the other side, gets away, senses the pressure. You see Dortch uncovers. In order to hit Marv, who was that far open, he's not looking at that spot. It's one of those spots. He's like, he's got the flag. He's like, hey, I'm open. Kyler's looking over at this side, the other side of the play. And part of it's because the Bills should not be this wide open, at least for the most part. Comes back to this side, and you can at least see here, the safety's trying to figure stuff out. I don't know if Kyler sees him or not. You can probably say, sure, maybe he should have seen him. They're clearly running back. He at least comes down, sees Dortch basically uncover, and it's like they're on the same page. Dortch is just watching him. He pulls up and then boom, whips around. Kyler even is almost throwing the ball before Dortch has even actually like whipped himself around, which is kind of crazy. He knows where the 1st down marker is. If this is a play that Marv runs and there's a safety that follows him all the way, that safety doesn't blow the coverage, we're talking about it's a great play from Kyler to Dortch. Instead, what we're going to get is this wide open Marvin Harrison Jr. shot, whereas we can see by the end of the play, that safety is hauling butt down there and kind of gets in the way of that play for the most part too, which is unfortunate, but that's just the case, is that this was not something I think that you put on Marvin. Maybe Kyler, when he's in one of these positions and is coming back, maybe you could say, yeah, he needed to run, kind of uncork a 50-yarder here. He still got the 1st down. He gets out of bounds. I don't think you fault him for this one as much, unfortunately.
Yeah, and the gravity of the situation is that that was the game-winning like touchdown if it does get made. But I've talked about this, when it comes to like, someone like Kyler Murray, throughout his entire career, like once again with the vision, if you sit where Kyler Murray is at, like just picture like the quarterback room and you think like this is your vision, basically. Your vision is already going to be obscured. When it comes to like a person that has to look over defenders, there is going to be circumstances where he's probably not going to be able to see those deep throws. I'll tell you this much. The Bills aren't going to let that happen again in any game. They're not going to be in a situation again where they're thinking to themselves, the corner came off, the safety over the top completely, just like didn't let, like, there was a defender, there was a wide receiver behind him. That's a big breakdown. They're not letting that happen again. That's why they say that's a once in a season type of breakdown, because in that situation, they're not doing that again because they don't want to risk giving up an easy touchdown because of miscommunication. I guarantee you, next time they have practice, they're going to come over that and they'll be like, we dodged a big bullet there because that was going to be the game winner. If Kyler Murray was able to see that route, even if there was like a passing lane that was open, he was, trying to juggle, trying to get that first down, which is why he, got it to Dortch, threw it to the corner. Dortch, him and the communication they had, Dortch knew he had to shed off of that coverage and, basically catch it beyond the sticks and go, out of bounds so he could save the time. So it's a tough thing. It is one of those situations and circumstances. Like I said, I'm more critical. I'm critical
on him for that, at least.
Yeah.
It's one of those people like, oh, he's wide open. I'm like, well, if you can run to your right and heave the ball 50 yards to have people watching him, well, knowing I got Greg Dortch right over here, we're on the same page picking up that first down. I think that's one of those places where, hey, if he'd thrown an incompletion, if he'd taken a sack, then I think we're talking about that. Let's finish up with at least for some of the drive, because I do want to make sure that we're sensitive at least on time. We got probably about 2 or 3 minutes left. I do want to make sure that we talk about the end of this play. Kyler at least here is throwing the ball to Trey McBride. You can see that they actually get the pass rusher into one of those sets. Trey McBride gets held a little bit from the line. He gets away with one. He sees McBride is open there. He throws the ball to his outside shoulder. Looks like he was expecting McBride to move a little bit outside. He catches it, but with one hand doesn't stab it in. You'd love to be able to have seen that. They still at least have this opportunity here. You got 2nd and 10, 40 seconds left. This is part of where you can say when Kyler in past years, I think of 2020, 2019, teams would bring a blitz and he would have a hard time of being able to know where to do outside of running. Here, no such thing. He reads the blitz quickly, throws the ball to Dortch, and Dortch is looking for a flag after they get tripped up, and they don't give it to him, which I thought was an interesting no call there because a lot of contact, 2 minutes left. You can see here, even when he throws it to him, Dortch is already stumbling. They ruled that Dortch fell down of his own accord. I'm fine with saying that. One of the things, too, is he's a small 5'8" receiver. The guy who's on him, at least, is going to be a lot bigger as far as a safety. This is one of those places where if it was me as the offensive coordinator, I would be throwing this ball not to Greg Dortch. I would have someone like Marvin be the guy who's there, slide Dortch up on the outside. That ends up being one of those things that if we don't see that in the future for the Cardinals, there will be probably a lot more questions with Petzing and then Drew Terrell, the coordinator. This does look like, at least in this spot, that he gets a little bit of a shove in on Dortch. They don't call it. Bills end up getting away with one. This is the one we get to talk about here, though, at least, because this is the Michael Wilson play with Greg Dortch operating out of the slot. They run the ball. So this is the one play that a lot of people were weirded out about. It's 3rd and 10. The ball's on the 32. You can see they've got 4 people setting up there. You got to get about 10 yards. This 3rd and 10. This is one of those things where I just did not understand this play call, because you can see what they've got a wide open spot right there. They're trying to hand it into James Conner, be able to see if they can run it up the middle, get Paris Johnson to kind of block another guy out of the way for him. Whatever the case is with this draw or with the handoff, it just ends up not really getting more than a couple of yards. This is one of those plays where, to me, there's a very easy adjustment that you can make, which is just do a quick motion, letting Marv know, hey, change your route that's going to be blocking that guy. Just change it to a quick comeback route, head to the outside, see if he can break a tackle. Instead, this is a run play all the way. We don't know who changed, if it was changed at the line of scrimmage. It seems like that was just the plan, was see if you can pick up maybe 7 or 8 yards and make it 4th and short. Instead, they make it another 3rd and long play. So I don't know where this call came from. This is one of the things I think you can complain about with Petzing, because very clearly, the Bills are prepared for the Cardinals to run the ball here. It's a good run cover. Everything is all set up. It doesn't make any sense to me to have 2 shots at being able to not just even get to the end zone, but to get a first down. I would rather trust Kyler's arms. And if you're going to be running the ball in that play, use his legs. He hasn't used them yet. We know that he can usually make a guy miss or pick something up. You're also going to then be treating his legs as a threat on 4th down with whatever call you're going to be looking for. That leads us, of course, to this 4th and 7 and the other call, which I think Marcos if we end up seeing this be a call that goes a little bit of a different way, we probably talk at least in generous terms about Kyler Murray. Bills bring 6 across the board. It's not cover 0 where they bring everybody and leave 4, but you can tell at least in this spot that they're bringing everybody, trying to sack Kyler, trying to end the game. This is one of those plays where what you'd want is for a Marvin Harrison Jr. to be able to kind of be an intended target, or you'd want to be able to say, get the ball to your playmakers and McBride and Dortch. That's what they do. They have Greg Dortch lines up outside, Trey McBride comes down, and so then this guy, he's got to then decide, am I going to stick with Greg Dortch up front, and all of a sudden Trey McBride is wide open for the first down, or do I stick with McBride in the coverage, and suddenly Greg Dortch has a step over the top. The play, it looks like they designed this to go to Dortch out of the slot. And part of that, too, is look at where the safety goes pre-snap. He runs to the Marvin side. He runs to the, I think, Trey McBride side, because that's going to be Michael Wilson. So this play, at least, when you see it, you're always going to drop at how close it actually ended up being. Because Dortch looks for a flag. He's like, the guy didn't look back for the ball, gets there early. When you look at it from the back angle, you can see it's a weird snap. Good job on Kyler for getting that. This is all the way planned to essentially run away from Von Miller on that side. They're bringing people. They're bringing Von. They're trying to sack Kyler. He reads it properly. And look at where this throw is. It's right on Dortch's outside shoulder. Mm-hmm. He catches it for the most part, and then ends up being hit by the other player and is dropped. So what's interesting about this is you look at Kyler Murray and can say, man, he didn't have a pass completed of 20 yards or more in the game. He was 0 for 6. You can also say, look, he had 2 drops of 20-plus yard plays, including 2 possible, one for sure at least, a game-winning type of a catch by Greg Dortch, and the other, at least one that probably would have set the Cardinals up into position to be able to drive down the field. And I think, Marcos, the biggest takeaway from this is when you're looking at just the stats, it doesn't tell you everything about the game. I thought this was one of Kyler's better games in his career. And at the same time, I think you got to say, look, the routes that Zach Pascal ran last year are the routes that Marvin's been running in this game. You're just lined up at the X, but you're not actually designing anything for the X. It's all running through your Trey McBride, your Greg Dortches. And that's something that I understand some of the game plan, but in this sense of context, you got to be willing to at least maybe move McBride outside, move some of the guys around. You've got to be able to do a bit more, because once the run game went away, it was very static. There wasn't a lot of motion. Kyler, for what it's worth, he probably did go out and win the game for them, and it ultimately was dropped on what we now see as the last throwing play of the game for the Cardinals after that turnover from downs, and probably what could have been a pass interference call if you wanted to call it like that. I don't think that I would have. I think that Dortch was having his jersey held onto a little bit. He couldn't get his second hand back over. I don't think he sold the hold as much as he could have. He just probably thought he was going to get flagged. It was honestly a good game for the Cardinals offense. It was a rough game for the Cardinals defense, Marcos, and I think that we all had guessed that would be the case coming into this game. It's just unfortunate to see that you still had a chance for the game at the end, in a game that you maybe didn't have as much of a shot being in. You're throwing the ball even amidst that wind, and I think that we probably saw a lot of what we wanted to see from Kyler Murray. We just didn't see the Cardinals get that win that we had hoped for.
Well, that's unfortunately, like, I think from both sides of the ball, I think I'm more like, I'm not really happy with what I saw. I think, like I said, there's going to be a couple more games before things get ironed out and we actually see what we need to see. And if we don't see it, that's some concern. But I do want to see more concepts. I want to see more pushing the ball downfield. I want to see more concepts where Kyler Murray is reading, more towards Marvin Harrison or pushing the ball downfield to Marvin Harrison. And I'm also hoping that, this is something that, I was always worried about. If you're not going to showcase anything during preseason and you're going to hype it up, when we lose, it's going to be a situation where they're going to start pointing fingers and they're going to be like, well, look at all that hype, what it bought us. It bought us 20 points on offense. So I want better progression each game. I think we're favored against the Los Angeles Rams. I'm not sure.
I think it's 1.5 Rams favorite at least.
Oh, okay. Well, we're close. Actually, we're almost kind of up in there with them.
Yeah,
they've had our number.
That's for a home dog of 1.5. Someone was even pointing out, man, Arizona hasn't been favored in a game for a long, long time. This is probably the closest to that we're going to have seen in a long time, until, of course, the Commanders game at home. it's the first time, at least I think since 2022, maybe even further than that, that they will be favored in a game is going to probably be that Commanders game, so long as Kyler Murray is active and playing in that game. This is at least a good chance against an injured Rams team that they'll have an opportunity to attack. We'll be able to go over more of that later this week. But yeah, no, Marcos, any other last thoughts, at least before we get out of here for today? We've been here on a nice long film study, but there was, I think, a lot to cover, at least in the offense and defensive side of the ball. This is one of the most entertaining games of week one for sure. We'll probably at least go over a little bit more on that kick return and when we come down to our film study, at least on Thursday, as well as a little bit more fun info for you guys there. But yeah, Marcos, feel free to give any last comments and then sign off.
Just like I said, they practiced with a chip on their shoulder this week, and they remember that the Rams have owned us, so that we need to start turning that the other way, because Kyler Murray has one win against the Rams in his career. He needs to change that this weekend. Like, he needs to change that. That they can't just keep losing to the Rams. And as far as our division goes, yeah, it's going to be a tough division once again.
Yep, absolutely. It might be the best division in the NFL. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. Again, that is Pancake Soul. I'm Blake Murphy at Blake Murphy7. Make sure you're following our podcast, at least on YouTube. Obviously, we had that QR code up on the screen for those of you on video for the whole time. You can also just search for Redbird Reboot. And for our podcast listeners, we're on all the major platforms, including Spotify. I'll try to have our podcasts up for sure within the first 12 hours of us recording. If not, then it'll be the first 24 hours, just to make sure, at least for those of you who miss out on our live stream, you can listen in later. Thanks again for tuning in. Hey, this has been the Redbird Reboot podcast. Cardinals have logged out for the week. They're logging back in this next week against the Rams, and we'll be logging out as well. Take care, everyone, and go Cardinals.
See you guys.